I don't know what you're talking about. I think you missed my whole point because your mind is so limited in your ability to think. You can't think. You're a typical listener of conservative talk radio. You're a parrot. You're repeating what you hear on other shows. Here you have a genius in front of you on the microphone, bringing forth to the audiences across America something brand new to the medium, and you can't even understand what I'm saying. Do you understand how frustrating that is?
I'm not trying to make it frustrating, Mr. Savage. If you want to use...
But you're not listening. And I'm using a technique that I would use as a professor, which is to browbeat my students to get them to listen. I'm not from the ding-dong school of teachers where you let the student lead the classroom. And the stupider the student, you bring him to the front of the room and you listen to Johnny. That's why we have morons in the schools.
Okay, well, the only other...
All right, that's the end of it. End of it. Get in the back of the classroom, okay? You're getting a D today. Look, I'm not mad at the guy. I did it as an example. They don't hear half the things you say. Do you understand that? There's another, being sick has given me a lot of time to be more alone than I normally am. It's given me a lot of time to think 24 hours in a row with nobody around me. My only constant companion is a 10-pound dog whose intelligence I've always known exceeds that of most people I've ever met. He's kind, he's loyal, he's caring, and you really find out whether you have friends or not when you're sick. I found that I have no friends, but I've known that a long time, and I'm not crying about it. I don't need friends. I'm not 5 years old in the first grade. None of us have any real friends. In our capitalist society, it's all about use and abuse. There are no friendships. It's you analyze your friendships and ask yourself how long those friendships would last if they weren't getting something from you, or they didn't hope to get something from you. And then you'll find out what our rotten system that we have. But I don't want to get sidetracked with my analysis. This is not based upon bitterness. I approached this idea when I was 18 years old, before I was political. So I'm not sitting here worrying about friends. I don't need fake friends. What I need is a reality show here. Unless we defeat ISIS, unless we defeat the worst scum the planet has seen since Adolf Hitler, I'm warning you as I sit here, they will raise the ISIS flag over the White House if they haven't already raised it inside the White House. Shall I go into that in a little more detail?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
I'm aware I may not be the youngest candidate in this race, but I have one big advantage. I've been coloring my hair for years.
Yeehaw!
You're not going to see me turn white in the White House.
So she is overtly either clinically psychotic, and the reason I say that is that she's trying to sound like she's from the South when she isn't, a spoiled Northerner with the best of advantages like Obama, who again tries to get down with the gutter people, let's say in Ferguson, and make believe he's one of them. It's typical of lying politicians, but this one I say is psychotic because she used this voice before and had been ridiculed for it for years, and here she is falling apart in the polls because everyone knows what a thief and a liar she is. At least they think she is. That's the common perception, is that she's a thief and a liar. With her Clinton library slush fund, I mean, if you did what they did, you'd be in prison. The IRS would hit you harder than any heavyweight boxer has ever hit an opponent for what they are doing and getting away with because they own the government. There's a government of the powerful, by the powerful, and for the powerful. Make no mistake about it. But nevertheless, put that aside. She goes to the Main Street Bakery in the South, and she uses a fake accent that any Southerner would laugh at. So Todd Starnes writes, I was surprised Miss Hillary didn't show up at her campaign rally in bare feet, waving a cast iron skillet and singing Dixie. It's very funny stuff. My point is she's using propaganda or attempting to use propaganda to sell herself. Next, she'll appear at an old age home in Boca Raton where there are still old Jews left who may be over 80 who still speak with a rising inflection at the end of their sentences. And she'll make believe she's from Brooklyn. You think I don't like a Knesh? You think I'm not for Israel? Obama does the same thing. The only people who don't do it are the square conservatives. Either they can't do it, they don't have the art to do it, they're too embarrassed to do it. But as a result, people think that they're squares. They can be wonderful people. And I'm trying to say to you that only by maligning the enemy and the opposite of what I'm saying, or to complete what I'm saying on the other side of the moon, maligning the enemy will defeat the enemy. So in this case, I'm maligning Hillary Clinton for being a phony. But she's not our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is ISIS. And I'm going back to World War II, when a powerful propaganda machine helped the United States win the war in the Pacific. Frank Capra, great film director. He had Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in 1939. And what did he do just weeks after Pearl Harbor? Frank Capra, the famous director, quit Hollywood and volunteered for service in the United States Army. With his nation at war, he was willing to do his bit in taking the fight to the Axis powers. Where's Harvey Weinstein when we need him? He's a Jew, after all. I know you just winced and sucked air into your filling. Harvey Weinstein's Jewish. ISIS would like to cut Harvey Weinstein's head off and throw him down a well. Katzenberg is Jewish. Geffen is Jewish. They are the Caesars of Hollywood. And the best protection I have against those who will accuse me of anti-Semitism is the fact that it's true what I just said. They own Hollywood. They run Hollywood. And yet none of them, as I can tell, has ever produced a movie which shows us the danger we are in from the Arabs in ISIS, who hate Jews in particular, and Christians in general, and Muslims who don't conform to their 9th century view of the world. Where is the Frank Capra of our time? So Frank Capra leaves the military, volunteers for service in the U.S. Army. He didn't go to the front lines to throw grenades at Nazis or stick bayonets into the guts of Japanese soldiers. He spent the entire war shooting his target with film, and he fashioned moving images into very powerful messages. And what his weapon was not a Thompson submachine gun, but a bulky movie camera. And over the war years, Frank Capra and his team produced 7 documentary-style movies, the very famous Why We Fight series, to explain why the U.S. found itself involved in the greatest war of all time. We are involved in the second greatest war of our time, and we are neutralized, we are neutered. We have been defeated by the lesbians. I'll say it like it is. It's like I don't care anymore. It's like I've come out of an illness. All gloves are off. I can't even mask what I'm saying. The radical lesbians destroyed America. They neutralized the Christian male. They made him ashamed of his own heritage and his own race. They have made us incapable of defending ourselves, let alone defeating the enemy. That's a full sentence. It started with the vile mouth of Bella Abzug. And here we are today where people are afraid to say the truth about ISIS, who both enslave young girls, rape young girls, kidnap women, turn them into slaves. Everybody knows this. When have you last seen a movie showing the enemy for what they are? When have you seen a Harvey Weinstein flick starring, let us say, Sean Penn as a valiant officer who goes to the Middle East and sees the rapes, the murders, and the kidnapping? Never. And you'll never see it, because we don't have a Frank Capra. We have the opposite right now. We have propagandists in Hollywood who, instead of using their genius, and never underestimate their genius, instead of using their genius to help us form a war against the enemy, shape the minds of our young and our soldiers to get ready for the fight that we're fighting right now, instead of doing this, the Weinsteins and the Geffens and the Katzenbergs and the Spielbergs of our time use all their efforts to debase the white Christian heterosexual male in subtle ways, of course. They don't do it as overtly as they did 5 or 6 years ago, but it's there in my estimation. I can show you 5 different movies where the enemy is the white heterosexual Christian male. And by the way, in that legion of Hollywood titans I mentioned, I would say the least offensive is Spielberg. At least he has to his credit the great movie Saving Private Ryan, which was ultimately an anti-war movie, by the way. Make no mistake about it. It wasn't the Why We Fight movie. Brilliant, wonderful, excellent. But it wasn't Why We Fight. It was more like Why Should We Fight? If you actually studied it, as I have. That's my job, is to look beyond the beyond. And so, as again, I want to say, maligning the enemy is something we don't do. We've been neutralized by very, very powerful forces in this country. And so you never see a movie showing an Arab as the enemy. Never. That's even though Jordan tells their own people how dangerous ISIS is, and they're a Muslim country. We are so, I don't know what word to use. I know what word to use. I can't. It's a family show. We've been so deballed that the people in this country don't even know what's going on over there. Then there were artists and writers who took it upon themselves to poke, provoke, prod, and otherwise persuade the average civilian at home how evil the Germans and Japanese were in World War II. And these propagandists produce messages in newsreels, billboards, print ads, on the radio. Everywhere you turned, imaginable and otherwise, there was a propaganda film or a propaganda poster during the years of World War II. Where is the propaganda against the worst scourge the planet has faced since old Adolf and his minions marched to the Horse Vessel song? Okay, so that's the layout of the whole show. I want to go now to some actual examples of what I'm talking about. The one on the children, oh, you got to listen to this. Which is the better Japanese one? Oh, here's a World War II anti-Japanese propaganda piece that's shocking. But this is what was used to give our troops courage to face the very formidable Japanese soldier. Listen to 03.
We're dealing with a fantastic people. First, let's examine a typical Japanese soldier. His average height is 5 feet 3 inches. His average weight, 117 pounds. He and his brother soldiers are as much alike as photographic prints off the same negative. His pay is 10 yen, or about $2.36 a month. His personal equipment is simple but practical. Fully supplied with ammunition, the load he carries weighs about 60 pounds, more than half his weight. His uniform is ill-fitting, his appearance unsoldierly, even comic according to Western standards. At drill, he may lack precision. But he is hard. He is able. He knows his job. His endurance is phenomenal. He'd just as soon go over a mountain as around it. He lives on rice and fish, or occasionally rice and meat, but often on rice alone. And he's proud of it. He is prouder still of the fact that to be a soldier is the highest human achievement in Japan. He has been trained to be a soldier almost from birth, and into his tough little mind has been drilled and hammered the fanatical belief that Japanese are descendants of gods and destined to rule the earth and all who live on it.
So that's a propaganda piece that was run in World War II in order to give our soldiers a sense of superiority to the Japanese soldier. And there were many, many others. We just had a few minutes to pull it. I had this idea only a few hours before the show, and I had the guys work very hard to find some of the examples of World War II propaganda. That was an anti-Japanese one. There's another one that you have to hear, which is clip 02 of the Nazi network and Nazi children. Listen to this propaganda piece.
Remember that only yesterday, every business, every profession was part of Hitler's system. The doctors, technicians, clockmakers, postmen, farmers, housekeepers, toy makers, barbers, cooks, dock workers. Practically every German was part of the Nazi network. Guard particularly against this group. These are the most dangerous. German youth. Children, when the Nazi Party came into power, they know no other system than the one that poisoned their minds. They're soaked in it. Trained to win by cheating. Trained to pick on the weak. They've heard no free speech. Read no free press. They were brought up on straight propaganda. Products of the worst educational crime in the entire history of the world. Practically everything you believe in, they have been trained to hate and destroy. They believe they were born to be masters, that we are inferiors, designed to be their slaves. They may deny it now, but they believe it, and will try to prove it again.
Well, there's another one. Of course, some of the words that I just heard were chilling.